The first Invictus/Defiance raid has come and just about gone, and today I want to talk through the what to get raid recap, talk about the build changes, what I'm using in the current targets, and any changes that I plan to make through next month. Hey everyone, Derpy here, and welcome back to another Battle Pirates video. I'm going to start out by showing you the participation on my alt account and then jump to a few other topics. If you want to jump to specific sections, such as me driving the 1201 target or talking about which officers are best for the Defiance, you can use the YouTube chapters feature to jump to whatever section you're most interested in. If this video is helpful, I ask that you go ahead and share this with your alliance members. I don't always post every video I make to every Facebook group, Discord group, etc., so you sharing really does help out. Now, in terms of total raid participation, my alt account Orange Jellyfish that hit one target and got 3,000 points is 6,700, so 6,700 people got basically any points in the raid, which, long story short, is not a lot. I do credit this to the 3-month cycle being like a little bit confusing, the targets being a little bit silly, and the outpost upgrade meaning that most people's fleets are really far behind. But that's the alt account for participation. Let's go ahead and check how my main account did. So I am actually just about at 80 million. I'll be able to tell you the number of sets and stuff that I hit after I do the 1201 target, which is coming up here briefly. 80 million points here, and honestly, I did not play as much as I could have, and definitely have a lot more things that I could have gotten from the prize store. I did fun things like going outside instead, which was pretty cool. Now, taking a look at the raid prizes, what to get, there is nothing too crazy like a new ship, new hull, etc. It's basically just stuff to make your Invictus and your Defiance fleets better. Now, the most important thing is, of course, the Invictus flagship, which I got and built pretty quickly. I needed 3 of the Soul Invictus build tokens. I only actually got 2 of the VXP tokens, and it literally has not mattered because my fleet is basically still stacked anyway. I decided, why waste 1.5 million points for like 1% VXP when the ship doesn't even fire standard weapons, because it is an evade ship, and I will go through the build. Now, I didn't actually end up getting any of the chests that help basically make your Invictus launcher more effective, or any of the chests that help make your Challenger rockets on your Defiance more effective. If I did have another, I believe, 22.5 million points for each category, I would have redeemed that, but it just didn't seem worth it to keep grinding out targets to make my fleet better at grinding out targets next month, which is something I run into pretty often. Now, you will want to go ahead and make sure you redeem the Invictus flagship upgrade kits. I got enough to bring this up to U2. I will redeem more of these actually. Let's go ahead and do this right now. If I max this out completely, I will never have to upgrade another, or never have to buy another flag kit. I will have to buy flag fragments ever again here. So by maxing those out, I never need to worry in next raid when X1 comes out. I think X1's already here, by the way. I guess I never need to buy another flag upgrade kit ever again. So just make sure you upgrade enough for that. I do have a builds or upgrade doc linked in the YouTube description, which shows you how many kits you need, 10, 40, 80, 80, etc., to do the upgrades and stuff like that. There's also some Invictus VXP tokens if your ships are under level, nothing too crazy there. But again, getting the flagship is the most important thing. Now, the other very important things are to get the upgrade tokens right here. The standard one for Invictus, the one for the Soul Invictus, these are incredibly necessary because your ships are probably a lower upgrade than usual because your Intel lab, which gives you discounts on the current tier, is likely not upgraded yet. Mine just hit the first level because I've been building my fusion factory instead. So you definitely want to make sure you get these, and also make sure you go ahead and check the actual tokens tab because there are Defiance upgrade tokens in here as well, which again, very important to redeem those ones, and I wish there was a search bar. But Defiance evolution tokens are hidden down here. Make sure you get those ones, as well as the 2-day structure build token, because, well, you'll want to get this one and keep your labs and stuff like that going. The other item that you may overlook is actually the evolution fragments for the Defiance. Don't worry about buying any old stuff whatsoever. You should never spend any shipyard time ever again on the Bonesaw or the however you pronounce that other one. I forgot already. You should never spend any time, any shipyard tokens, any raid prize, whatever, on this old stuff. They're basically useless already, although they're still around in the Forsaken mission. Now, in terms of the Defiance upgrade fragments, let's go ahead and actually pull up. I do want to go back to the open up my upgrade kits and times sheet right here, which I'll do, and you can see that there are different requirements for different levels and stuff like that, different fragments. We're currently through E5 on the Dreadnought, and I believe I have enough. I believe I have 0 fragments and my ship is currently at E5. This means that if I want to upgrade to E8, I'll need 200 additional fragments, and I'll get that last chunk, that 350, a little bit later. So I want to redeem up to 200 fragments so I can upgrade to E8 or start doing that as soon as this comes out. So jumping back in game here and taking a look, 200 fragments is... let's see, can I even do enough? I could get 400, I could only get 100 if I wanted, I guess. So I'm going to have to max this out because 20 times 5 is 100, and I need 200. So I guess I'm just going to have to max this one out and use the extra points on something else and continue to redeem other stuff later. Okay, nothing else too crazy going on here. There's some other random tokens and stuff. There's a bunch of chests. Let's now talk about the officer chests before I go into the target specific stuff, and actually I'll talk about which officers are best in a second too. So I will touch on the officer chests a little bit later, but I think these are generally a better bang for your buck than the launcher chests and stuff like that. What I want to do now is talk about my performance using my Invictus fleet, so I'll go ahead and show you my Invictus build at the same time as talking about those. It should be no surprise to folks that I went with an Evade flagship build, and this was done because the Sol Invictus here, you can see, has 225 million armor points compared to everyone else, which only has 200 million armor points. This means that the Phlogiston launchers in the targets are going to shoot at the flagship first until it's down 25 million hit points. This is incredibly important because, again, there's King Killer and there's an accuracy-based turret. You can basically remove all damage from this turret completely, or like 99% of it, by using a heavy evade ship. Now, I've done this through using D5EV, through using lowered cannon mount, and that's why I have all the speed stuff on here as well. A bunch of V-mortars. I have a heavy scattergun, which I would get in the raid price list if you don't have it. This heavy scattergun is on here purely for combat speed, and I'm actually pretty thankful that Kixeye put it in strike and I was able to redeem it. And then, of course, I have D5 EV armor for both evade and combat speed. This gives my ship a total range that's actually a little low, so this is going to stick slightly ahead of my standard ships, even on auto, which honestly is a little annoying because I have to press the down button more often, but whatever. And you'll see that the combat speed on this guy here is 113 with a turn speed of 145. This compares to the standard ships, which have a turn speed of, let's see, movement speed. The turn speed is 138, so the flag is slightly faster at turning, and the combat speed is 112, so the flag is 1 combat speed faster. Those are both good things. I want my flagship to be forced to be slightly ahead, so 113 combat speed for flag, 112 for the others is what I'm going for here. Now, you will notice I have no armor on these standard ships. I'm working on adding in just the standard armor that came out in the FM for this one. I'm not using D5EV because if I was, the ship would go too fast and it wouldn't work. I'd have to actually drop the evade on my flagship in order to do that, which is like super, super bad. I would not want to do that. I wouldn't want to take off lowered cannon mount 2 on the flag. So that's the reason the standard ships are just built all the same, all as damaged ships. They, again, have only 1 armor plate on here, and there's still a few U2 ships. I have a U3 and an X1 ship with tokens, but I'll continue to upgrade these and hopefully get them to all X1 by next raid, and maybe even save some tokens to get Cap 1 instantly on at least 1 ship when it comes out. Couldn't tell you what Cap 1 is. Sometimes it's an aura with a duplicate cap of 1, which is sometimes pretty nice. Okay, so there's the build for the Invictus, but how does it actually do in the targets? The short story is it autos the 100 for 35 minutes of repair, and it autos the 101 for just over an hour of repair if you enter from the top left. It can also drive the targets for instant map repair if you are curious about that one. I tend to auto things when I can, so that's the reason why, even though this is a perfectly built damage driving setup, I'm still going to auto with it because there's just too many targets in the actual event to go through and drive. So there's the fleet updates on that one. I'm very, very happy with the build here, and I'm not going to change it. There's going to be no changes other than just adding the standard armor and continuing to refit on slightly better components as I do unlock those. Okay, let's go ahead and jump to the Defiance. Now, I did not actually make any videos about this one, again, because I did fun things like go outside, but the Defiance is able to auto the 1200 target for 45 minutes of repair, which is the damage on the ship before I start. Let's go ahead and go through the target and see what kind of results I'm getting just by driving this guy, not necessarily paying a ton of attention, but maybe discussing the general mechanics. There's a few different ways to do this, and I actually tend to prefer to not just stack everyone up, and I actually am basically going to be dodging the flagship and stuff the entire time because these drones that he shoots out are actually pretty annoying, and you have to basically run away from them. They're really, really hard to dodge. They will start to self-combust eventually, which works pretty well here, but again, just be careful because they're pretty annoying. Now, I do want to say that sprints are firing in these targets, but they're not very effective. This is because sprints have a pretty low projectile speed, all things considered. They sometimes don't even fire when they could. And then the other piece is, if you look at the rockets that are incoming, when I go over, say, this ship right here, or, some of these ships, some of them are uncounterable, but there's a lot of rockets. There's a ton of rockets right here, and I only have 2 sprints, which means even if the sprints fire at everyone every time, or every ship every time, which they don't, but even if they did, we would, basically 2 sprints against 100 rockets is going to take down 2 of the rockets, not 100 of the rockets. So that's the short story and why the sprints are not too effective. If I was building this fleet from scratch, I would not use sprints at all because, again, they just don't really work super well. I would use 4 cormorants, which is what I've got on here right now, and then I would also use just the rest regular damage rockets. Now, in terms of armor, I do have 1 D5 EV plate, which I put on, even though it does add repair time, and I've generally railed against it, because I have been driving the 1201s, and I want driving to be fun. I want to be able to drive this thing around like a sports car super fast. I want to be able to go crazy with this thing, whereas if it has more combat speed, it will be more fun. It'll be more fun to drive, and that actually combat speed probably does help reduce damage from the rockets a fair amount in this target, whereas it is not needed in the Invictus targets. Now, what I am doing in this target is I'm going around trying to avoid damage as best as possible from most of these things here, targeting these ships with a purple icon first, because if I kill those, then I'm going to be able to take down the shrouded flagship, which is actually relatively easy to do once you have everything else down here. Now, there's a few other things I could be doing better. I could be staying at max range. I could be clustering these guys up more. I could have triggered the flagship a little bit later. But again, this is just trying to show the general mechanics and how I actually typically drive a target, not necessarily the perfect path and everything. Now, the lionfish ships, which, by the way, awful ship, by the way, these just go around the outside of the target. They do have a minimum range weapon. You want to stay away from those if possible. I actually don't think I got hit by that weapon once in this particular target, so that was pretty nice. I will say the clouds are annoying. I find myself getting damaged by clouds where I don't think I should be, because for some reason the cloud hitbox appears to be larger than the cloud itself, which is annoying. So if I go right here on the edge, watch the down bar next to the ship. I'm going to get close to the cloud, and I'm not in the cloud yet, and I'm taking damage. That's like pretty annoying. I guess I can just drive better and be more conservative or something, but nothing too crazy. Now you will notice my 4 cormorants are enough to keep pace with the torpedoes from the flagship as long as you're a good distance away here. So again, that's kind of a typical target and what a typical driving of that typical target looks like. Remember, I did have 45 minutes of repair when I started, so let's actually check the damage battle report and build to see if anything crazy happened. As you can see, most of the damage is explosive with a little bit of concussive. I haven't actually spent too much time figuring out where each comes from. Concussive is probably the torpedoes and explosive is probably everything else, but I think there's some Gatling guns and other stuff in this target. Taking a look at the repair time, I went from 45 minutes and I added just about, I said, exactly 45 minutes more of repair. 45 plus, it's only 35 minutes, so 3.5, just over 1 coin worth of repair on this target is, or 1 coin with instant repair, whatever, is what I got from this one. I would generally actually just drive a whole bunch of these in the row until the ship's dead and then repair it for 5 hours. And here's the build I'm using. Let's actually go ahead and go back into base so I can show you it in a little bit more detail. Now, let's actually check how many sets I've completed. I need to close this window first, and I've completed 26 sets of everything, and actually a pretty even number in terms of the 101, 100, 1200, etc. I probably could auto another 1200 and another 1201 just to try and get another 2 million points to buy something else with, but 8 million is pretty nice here because it means I can get 2 more officer chests. Let's go ahead and open these up, and that'll be the last thing I redeem this raid. And let's actually look at the build for the Defiance and talk about the officers as the sort of last 2 things for this one. Now, I'm actually generally pretty happy with the Defiance build that I came up with first. I guess the only thing I'm changing, I already mentioned, is that the sprints are going to go. I'm not going to use sprints anymore in these ones. They really just don't work well enough. I'm going to replace them with damage weapons so I can just kill things more quickly. Now, the other piece here, actually, if I should make it so you can see, the other piece here is that I only have 1 D5 EP armor, simply because I only had one build token or 2 6-hour build tokens or something when I was putting armor plates on here. So I'm only using those so far, but I'm going to max out the thing with all of 8 armor, mostly for the combat speed benefits, and I'll eat the extra repair time that gets added. I did get a bunch of the free Kixeye chests in terms of the Challenger rocket, so I actually have a pretty good setup there. I definitely could redeem another 20 million points of the chests to get more weapons, but I already talked about that one. Dropping the sprints, adding weapons, nothing else too crazy. We do expect some escalation weapons to come out in Strike 3, I believe. We haven't even had Strike 2 yet, so again, just watch out for those ones. As the Defiance does get more upgrade levels unlocked, I will be able to put on more weapons, put on more armor, put on more CICs, etc., which are either in the Forsaken mission or in Strike, one of those 2. Just check those out. I think it is actually the Forsaken mission. Now, taking a look at the officers, that's the last thing I wanted to go through here, you'll notice that I have the legendary 3-star captain, which is pretty cool. I actually got this guy out of my second chest, which I was very, very surprised about. And again, I guess you get lucky sometimes. Sometimes you get a bunch of legendary stuff the first raid. Sometimes, well, you don't get basically anything the entire time. And taking a look at my defense stats here, it's already at 1.4 million, which will be important when I talk about what officers to actually use. Opening the next 2 officer chests got me a Captain Darrow uncommon, doesn't matter, I already have the legendary one, and then the artillery officer stone, which I think I already had 1 copy of these. You can check which copies you have, by the way, what you have by going to the fusion factory, going to officers, unchecking show fusible, and this shows every single officer from every single ship. It would be really nice if we could actually filter this down to only show Defiance or something. I believe only these bottom 3 are Defiance ones. It's probably an oldest to newest kind of thing here. So again, once I do have 3 of the stone artillery officer, I can fuse this guy into the 2-star stone, which will give slightly better repairs and stuff like that, or slightly better results. Now, the question you have might be, which crew should I be using? And that's what I want to go through here. So, by the way, this is like really obviously AI art on this guy, which I find pretty disconcerting. If you have the captain at any level, you should use the captain at any level in the first slot. This is because the explosive damage you get from this guy and splash are very, very powerful, in addition to the extra movement speed and all that stuff, as you even get the 2-star one. The 2-star captain is better than the 3-star of every single other officer for the dreadnought possible. So that's like a general rule of thumb, and also the case in this particular instance. So if you have the captain, start using that one. Now, in terms of the second best officer, it's basically a 3-way tie for last place. They're not very good. The best one is the stone officer that does explosive damage, and this is helpful for killing things more quickly. I'm not going to complain about that one. There's no downsides. But again, it's actually pretty underpowered. I would hope for something that would reduce my damage rather than something that would help kill the enemies more quickly, which you'll start to do anyway by yourself if you have some pretty nice weapons and the captain and stuff like that. Now, the Shipwright Officer Dash, which there's no art for, it only gives you evade, which does not help against rockets, so that's like pretty useless. It doesn't help against splash weapons either, so if there are concussive weapons in this target other than torpedoes, it probably doesn't help, and turn speed basically doesn't matter. I could care less about turn speed on this one at all. So there's no scenario where I'm using the Dash Officer over literally anything else unless I don't have any other officers at all. Now, the Research Officer is interesting because it gives you survival. What Kixeye I don't think knows about survival is that the more of it you have, the less that any matters. So if I actually go to my survival calculator here and plug in some numbers, I might actually not be able to, but we'll see here. If I have 1.4 million survival, which is just about what I'm showing here. If I have, let's just change this to 1.4 million survival, right? And this is what most of your ships, most of your Defiance, the survival will be at, say, E5. It will be even higher at E10 when that comes out. But if I go to the officer here and I add 150k, so let's just do this cell plus 150k, that's a 10% reduction in damage taken at the very best case. Now, if I only have the 40k survival officer, for instance, the reduction damage is going to be much, much lower. I'm going to get, let's see, a 3% reduction in damage. So if you have the legendary officer, which I happen to have opened on my third chest, that's worth it right here. But the other two are just like very low, very underpowered. You have so much survival already on the Defiance. If you went from 0 to 150k, that would be an insane ROI. But if you're going from 1.5 million to 1.5 million plus 150k, it's really just like not very good. So TLDR is use the captain at all if you have it, and then the artillery officer and the research officer are the other two I would consider using. Use the highest rarity you have. Taking 10% less damage is probably better than taking, say, than doing 8% more explosive damage, but probably not as good as doing 15% more explosive damage. So there are the results and what officers you should kind of use. Checking my notes here, I don't have any other crazy things to go through. I talked about the build and stuff, which I'm actually very happy with. I'm not changing my Defiance build over the next few weeks before the next raid, and I'm not changing my World Leader builds. I'm very happy with those ones. I'm curious how you did in the raid. I showed you how I did in terms of, let's see if I'm breaking top 1,000 yet. Not quite. People are blitzing the raid as it's finishing out here. But 82 million, 26 sets worth, 1,131. How did you do in the raid? Go ahead and let me know in the comments section down below. And of course, if you have any questions on this, go ahead and let me know in the comments too. With that said, I want to give a huge thank you to the channel members whose names appear on the end screen now. They're helping make videos like this one possible. And until next time, this is Derpy signing out, helping you be a better pirate.